Good afternoon, folks. My name is Tim Wheaton, and we are the MMA Sucka Show. I am joined today by the editor at MMA Sucka, Frazer. Frazer, what's going on today? How are you, sir?
Yeah, good. Thank you, mate. We were just chatting off air. We've got so much to cover. I think we just better jump straight into it because otherwise we'll be talking for the next 3 or 4 hours on everything that happened last weekend, everything that's happening this weekend. We've got news and everything to cover. So let's get straight into it, mate.
Let's get straight into it. Let's not waste any time at all. Let's talk about the future of Naaman Gracie. Do you think he has a no? It's Phil Davis defeats Yoel Romero at Bellator. We got Anthony Smith got a win. Ian Cutelaba got a win. Anything you want to say on any of those fights, or just jump straight into UFC 266?
I think all I would say is, believe what we say. We said on the preview last week, we questioned or the artist formerly known as Yoel Romero, as I like to refer to him these days. We questioned his MMA wrestling credentials. His wrestling credentials are unquestionable. They are elite. You don't get into the Olympic team, let alone win a medal, if you haven't got elite wrestling. But MMA wrestling is a whole different thing. And Phil Davis showed that his MMA wrestling is better than Yoel Romero's. And then, when we passed comment on both Anthony Smith and Ryan Spann fight and Iron Cutelaba, we said Cutelaba, when he fought Khalil Roundtree, he did well in the wrestling. What happened in this fight? He managed to hurt Devin Clark on the feet, reverted to the wrestling, constant trips, constant takedowns, and he dominated the fight. And then with Anthony Smith, he just out experienced Ryan Spann. You saw Ryan Spann made the same mistakes in the Anthony Smith fight as he did in the Johnny Walker fight when he was just over swinging. He got a little bit too excited and got caught. And Johnny Walker put him out cold, whereas Anthony Smith just almost old manned him. He out experienced him and took him down, got the fight to the ground. Knocked him down as well, and was able to finish it with a rear naked choke. So yeah, I think the moral of the story is listen to what we say because we're spot on with a lot of our calls.
No, absolutely. And yeah, like it was pretty much went there wasn't a huge amount of talking points coming out of the weekend because I don't think we learned anything new about Anthony Smith or Phil Davis. They fought in the way that they normally fight, and that's kind of how it went. So it's not an overly interesting talking point weekend. Rankings didn't update. However, this weekend we got the big stuff going on, like even the undercard on UFC 266. These could be main event fights for an ESPN card, like Curtis Blaydes and Jairzinho
Sure, yeah.
Rozenstruik. That's a main event on ESPN. The Dan Hooker Nasparaz fight. That's a main event. Like there's so many good fights on this card. And Nick Diaz, Robbie Lawler, Valentina Shevchenko, Lauren Murphy. And of course, the main event, which we'll start with right now, we'll go right into it. Brian T. City Ortega is challenging for the title against Alexander the Great Volkanovski. Brian Ortega is coming off of a one fight win streak in which he had a dominant 5-round win over the Korean Zombie. Alexander Volkanovski has 2 wins over Max Holloway, although a lot of fans do question those wins. He's also has knockouts over Chad Mendez. He's a very talented fighter. There's a lot to break down here. And of course, we can't break down this fight without talking at length with Max about Max Holloway. So it's just right in our wheelhouse. Just the subject we love more than anything. But yeah, jump right into it. What do you see in this matchup? What do you think of the future of these guys? It's a great matchup.
Yeah, it is like you say. The guys are on different trajectories. Volkanovski is undefeated in a number of years since 2013. Obviously undefeated in the UFC. I mean, the quality of opposition that he's fought is up there. I think he very much goes under the radar. Chad Mendez wasn't, he was good when they fought Jose Aldo, featherweight goat, arguably.
Mm-hmm.
Both Max Holloway fights, yes, they were close contentious, but they were contentious because he either lost a close decision or he won a close decision. But the thing is, that means that he's taken enough rounds off Max Holloway to put that doubt in people's minds. And I know MMA math simply doesn't work, but the way that Volk beat Holloway is, it's not comparable to the way that Holloway beat Brian Ortega. But Holloway dominated Ortega, and we spoke about it last week. He one of the best performances I've ever seen, and then he ups that by beating Calvin Qatar. But that wasn't even close. Ortega, I think, maybe got him down once. His wrestling but he wasn't able to keep him down there at all. His striking was amateurish in comparison to Holloway's. Whereas Volk, the debate is there because Volkanovski did enough to win both fights. but Ortega didn't against Holloway. Sorry, so it's a close fight, and this new and improved Brian Ortega that we saw against Korean Zombie. If we see that against Volkanovski, I think it'll be a much better fight. But it's going to be it's intriguing because we don't know what Ortega is going to show up. We don't know how Volkanovski is going to be after the layoff, and after obviously had quite a bad bout with COVID. So it's definitely one to keep an eye out for. And I'm glad that Volkanovski is finally getting a main event slot.
No, absolutely. He's well deserved of it after two, at worst, even if you think he clearly lost those fights, two extremely close fights with Max Holloway. Now in this fight on the technical breakdown side, I was looking at Brian. I watched a bunch of tape on both guys, and I'm not questioning their offensive abilities. I think both of them offensively are really good, but I am questioning both of their defensive abilities. And let me explain a little bit. So initially I picked one fighter outright, but after watching tape, it's a lot closer than I expected. Volkanovski quite often sometimes struggles with openings, and that's where he was getting caught with Max Holloway, like with the uppercuts that were continuously landing. He was getting caught with a lot of 1-2s. That's the same uppercut that Max dropped Volkanovski with, that Ortega had knocked out Frankie Edgar with. Ortega sometimes finds good openings as a counter during an opponent's openings, like that spinning back elbow against Korean Zombie. More often than not, both fighters retreat straight back and just turtle. So those counters are a lot more rare for Ortega, and they're a lot more rare for Volkanovski, where both of them just kind of move back. So Max was using a long stance and was able to land a lot of teeps and jabs smoothly. Ortega will also be using a lot of, he'll be using a long stance like he did against Korean Zombie, uses a lot of straight kicks to the body in that fight. For openings to be safe, Volkanovski will need to be using a lot of inside and outside leg kicks, feints to set up his shots safely. Volkanovski will have a speed advantage in this fight, which he's so fast for a guy his size.
Exactly. And explosive really, as well with the.
That's the thing. Those overhands, those that come over the shoulder, he's really good at. He's good at a jab lead hook as his like signature strike. He's really cool at that. For Ortega to have success, he's going to have to mix in leg kicks and be the aggressor. I always like to do this particular move to watch for, like that uppercut I'm talking about, the head kick I'm talking about, inside leg kicks. And most analyzers use generalities to break down MMA fights. However, in this case, as much as I do want to talk about specific moves like the uppercut, I think generalities are okay because both of them cover up when they are defensive and just put their hands up and move straight back. I think the generality of land first and be the aggressor, control the center is enough to win this fight. I think both of those fighters need to be having the same game plan, which is to control the center and land first and constantly have their opponent push to the back foot. So I mentioned a lot of tools that Ortega can use, but overall I'm going to be picking Volkanovski. He's going to be faster. I think he's going to have the speed advantage. I think he will land first. And especially over a 5-round fight, I think he's going to wear Ortega down. So officially I'll pick Volkanovski like a 5-round TKO or something like that. But tell me your thoughts. Like, you're very good at breaking down and analyzing fights on the technical side.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything you're saying. And like you say, I think whoever is the outright aggressor is probably going to get, I know it sounds obvious, but probably going to get the upper hand, because they'll be the ones going forward. But, if it is, and like you say, Volkanovski backs up and turtles up, so it arguably makes him easier to take down because his hands are up and he can't defend the takedowns with getting underhooks or whatnot. With that being said, he's got a 76% takedown defense, which, that means that obviously he gets taken down pretty much 1 in every 4 attempts. But if we break that down, he's only been taken down 6 times in his UFC career, and 3 of them were from Chad Mendes. Mm. Chad Mendes is an elite wrestler. We've seen it against Aldo, McGregor. We didn't see it so much against Edgar, but we've seen it throughout his career that he takes guys down and mauls them. And for Volkanovski to have got taken down 3 times, survived on the ground, and then got up to KO Mendes it's impressive, But like you say, if Volkanovski's backing up, and you'd expect someone with such an elite ground game as Brian Ortega to be good at takedowns, and I've mentioned it to you before, Ortega, Damian Maia, Mackenzie Dern, these are all elite jiu-jitsu guys with poor wrestling. Mackenzie Dern's wrestling, yes, it's improving, but it is awkward and it's difficult to watch at times because she wades in with these hands and just tries to get her hands on. And it's just exactly the same with Brian Ortega. Ortega against Holloway, I know we keep on going back to it, but it's just so poor. It's, he's stuck in. He sort of almost sees the legs and just goes for it without setting anything up. He's got a 21% takedown accuracy, which is, to be honest, nothing for someone who's got that many submissions. He's got a host of, he's got, I think, 4 submissions in the UFC, but you're looking at submissions from when he's been taken down. He's off his back against Moicano, or the sort of, I mean, it was beautiful, but it was a strange sort of jumping, standing guillotine against Cub Swanson. So even if I think Volkanovski can afford almost to give his hips ever so slightly, if he is going to back up and turtle up, he can afford to almost give his hips a little bit to Brian Ortega, because unless we've seen in these 2 years, we didn't see an awful lot against Zombie, but unless we've seen a drastic change in his wrestling game, Brian Ortega is not that good at wrestling. He might have good defensive wrestling, but then he probably doesn't use that defensive wrestling so much because he's happy to fight off his back. Now, we haven't seen Volkanovski off his back an awful lot. If Brian Ortega does manage to get a knockdown or a takedown, what's Volkanovski's game like off his back with the offensive game of Brian Ortega is something I think I've seen a lot of people talk about. It'll be a big factor, but I can't see. I think this one will be similar to the Zombie fight and similar to the Holloway fight. We saw Ortega's has the long stance similar to. I expect him to come out exactly the same as he did against Zombie. You can't change your game twice. He changed his game from the Holloway fight. He changed it massively. Had best part of 2 years, 18 months off, fought Zombie. That was a huge. We didn't see anything that we saw in the Holloway fight. It looked like a whole new fighter, which means that he's going to come in that boxing style. He's going to be quite heavy on the lead leg. And Volkanovski punished Holloway's legs with the leg kick, so why go away from that? And I think that's going to play a big factor. If he wears on the legs, he can even afford to probably. Volkanovski can afford to. He's going to be definitely the stronger guy in there, So I think he can afford to wear away at the legs and maybe get it in the clinch and try and work Ortega in the clinch and, like you say, tire him out. And potentially, I'm picking Volkanovski as well, but I think I'm probably going to go via decision. We've only seen Brian Ortega lose once, and it was a finish, and it was more. He retired on the stool rather than, or his team retired him on the stool. Caveat to him, he's tough, but I think Volkanovski's just got more experience over 5 rounds against better guys. He's gone 50 minutes, 10 rounds with Max Holloway, who, if you can keep up with Holloway's pace throughout, you're going to be able to keep up with anyone's pace in the division, and I think that will pay dividends.
I completely agree with you, especially on the ground and wrestling tip, where we've heard a lot about Brian Ortega's jiu-jitsu. And we honestly, it's hard to say because he does have submission wins, but they are mostly, like you said, almost panic wrestling, like people going for bad takedowns and he gets a guillotine, or the weird jumping guillotine that he got. It's not always that he's moving to position and getting a smooth, good submission. It's usually just a submission off a takedown. Like you said, his takedowns are not very good. So I think you and I agree that. And you know what? One thing for Volkanovski as well, he's actually very good at counter wrestling. So even the takedowns that Chad Mendes got, the 3 in that fight, he got up. Like, he's very good at quickly getting up. His own takedowns that he got, I think 1 or 2 on Max Holloway, he's not great at holding people down, but it's usually just for a purpose of trying to surprise an opponent. But if you were in Brian Ortega's corner fighting Volkanovski, most people I've spoken with are picking Volkanovski. You and I both are picking Volkanovski. But if you're in Brian Ortega's corner, what is your game plan? What are you instructing him in this fight to do?
I think he's got to, like you say, he's got to be the offensive, be the, he fought quite a lot on the back foot Zombie fought quite a lot on the back foot against him, so he had to lead in that fight, which is very un-Zombie like. We always see Korean Zombie walk forward like we saw against, Danny Ige and Yair Rodriguez until that crazy knockout. So I think Ortega's got to be the one, and he's got to mix it up. Volkanovski's going to know that his wrestling isn't great, but he's also going to know that if he does get me to the ground, I'm in trouble. Not to say that's anything against Volkanovski's ground game, but it's praising Ortega's ground game more than anything. So I think he's got to mix it up. He's got to stick behind the jab. He's got a shorter, despite the fact Volkanovski's a shorter guy, he's got the longer reach advantage, which is the same against Holloway. You know, he's a much shorter guy against Holloway. He had the longer reach advantage. So that's nothing new to Volkanovski. But Ortega's got good hands. You know, we saw him tag up Zombie. So I think he's got to stick behind the jab and really try to, you know, don't be afraid to lose a round or two, but don't get too far behind, because you know he is quite a slow starter. Ortega, he takes a round and a half to maybe just figure out the reads that Volkanovski will give. And to be honest, I think he's got to go all out to try and get Volkanovski down to the ground at some point, and just, you know, even just threaten a guillotine or in the clinch, you know, try and wrap the neck, or even if he wants to get out of the clinch, a little Kimura trap to get out of the clinch, just to sort of say, look, I'm not just a striker now. You know, I've got the ground game, but it's not just on the ground that I can do it. You know, I'm a threat everywhere, and he has to give Volkanovski multiple things to think about. Whereas someone would say, like a Francis Ngannou, he's never going to come out and try and take Stipe Miocic down. You know that you've just got to avoid that right hand for long enough to try and land a takedown or to try and counter him. With Ortega, there's got to have multiple things that you've got to think about, which is kind of what we saw in, you know, the Khabib versus Conor fight. Conor was so obsessed with the takedown of Khabib, that big overhand right. I think it was in the third or maybe in the second round. It's in the second, I believe. You know, you could see Khabib sort of dips in to almost and then comes over with the right, catches Conor straight on the chin and knocks him down. That's because Conor was so obsessed with the takedown that he ignored the stand-up game of Khabib, whereas that's exactly what Ortega's got to do. He's got to get Volkanovski thinking just about the hands and then mix in a takedown. You know, Volkanovski, I think, Ortega's got the skills to sort of roll for a heel hook even. And, you know, if he tries that within the first 10 seconds of the fight, or even in the first round, that will give Volkanovski a little, you know, I've really got to keep my distance. I can't stand in the pocket with him for too long, but I also can't stand too far away because he will roll for my ankle. So it's, I think, just almost fill the brain of Volkanovski with danger, as it were, and get him thinking. And then, you know, Ortega, we've seen he's got hands. You know, knocked out Frankie Edgar, he knocked out Clay Guida with that knee. He'd knocked down Korean Zombie with a spinning elbow. You know, we've seen he's got good sort of Dutch kickboxing fundamentals with the hook and the leg kick we saw against Holloway a few times. Use it, you know, use everything that you've got. It's his second title opportunity, arguably undeservedly, this one, because he is coming off just one win. Yes, it was a very good win, but, you know, there's other people in the division that arguably deserve another title shot. And if you lose to Volkanovski, it's going to be a hard sell for him to get another title shot, because I think Volkanovski and Max Holloway are the two best in the division, and one of them is going to be champion for a long time. Whether it's Volkanovski carrying on or Holloway, a third fight with Volkanovski and he captures the belt. Holloway beats Ortega every day, I think. So it's going to be a hard sell for another title shot for Brian Ortega should he lose this one. So, you know, drill that into your fighter. This is do or die. So it's all or nothing. So.
And he is tough as nails, like taking that many shots from Holloway and not going down. Like you said, it was a corner. And he did have some success in that fight that you pointed out with the leg kicks in round 3. He was actually doing really well at landing leg kicks. Just Holloway adjusted and ended up beating him. Now, one thing that's interesting on this fight is, what do you do after? Because like you said, Brian Ortega may not be working his way back to a title. If it's a dominant loss, they certainly won't be giving him a rematch. The only two people at the top of the division are Yair Rodriguez and Max Holloway. Let's say Max Holloway wins. Who do you put him up with? You're going to put him up against Brian Ortega? How do you advertise a fight of like, this guy absolutely died the last time he fought him, but maybe he'll win this time? Like, that's not a sellable. Volkanovski's already beaten him twice. So if you put up a third fight against Holloway, you have to keep advertising that the judges probably got it wrong. You have to keep putting this on a poster. Every trailer, you have to say like, well, maybe the judges got it wrong. You're disrespecting your champion more. So if Max Holloway wins, what happens in this division? Do you do a rematch against either of these guys against Holloway? What would you do as a matchmaker?
That's the thing, you know. Francis Ngannou versus Stipe Miocic 2 worked because Miocic had fought Ngannou, dominated him 50, 44, even 43 maybe on all scorecards. You know, but he'd been finished after that, and he'd had tough fights with Daniel Cormier, and Francis had been on a tear. Yes, he'd lost to Derek Lewis afterwards, but he'd fought the Rozenstruiks and the Curtis, but he'd worked his way back, and he'd got these highlights, and you could see the vast improvements in his game. Now, Holloway Ortega, I think, goes that way every time they fight. Maybe not that dominant, without a doubt, not that dominant, because he was, if you remember, Holloway was the underdog going into that fight because he'd had the concussion-like symptoms in an international fight week, and he hadn't fought in a long time. And Ortega was coming off the knockout of Edgar and the finish of Moicano and Cub Swanson. He was on a tear, but to just completely end that hype in a dominant way. If he would have gone a 5-round, even a 4-1 split in favor of Holloway, there's at least an argument then. Look how much Ortega's improved. He could easily win 2 more rounds, but because it was a 4-0 shutout and a finish and a dominant finish, and it was just so surprising to see. So I want to see it because I like watching Holloway perform, but from a matchmaking point of view, how do you sell that fight a second time? The redemption for Ortega, but then Holloway can just turn around and be like, look, I dominated. Yes, he had me rocking and rolling once, but that was once in the whole entire fight, And the third fight with Volkanovski, like you say, is it fair on Volkanovski that he's beaten this guy twice? And he's having to beat him a third time just because you almost want Max Holloway to be champion. And
yeah,
it's, how should Volkanovski have to prepare for Max Holloway 3? I agree with the rematch originally, the second fight, because Holloway was such a dominant champion. It was a close fight, the first fight. But then a third fight, Holloway, what does Volkanovski get out of it? Unless he gets a huge new contract from it, he has to prepare for the same guy for a third time. Almost, he's no fresh blood. He doesn't actually gain it. Yes, he gets another title defense, another gem on his belt, but other than that, what does Volkanovski get? He's proved that he's beaten this guy twice. It's not his fault that the judges gave it to him. He did everything he did to win the fight, and I think it's going to definitely be a talking point for next Monday's podcast when we actually see how Ortega and if Ortega goes out there and dominates Volkanovski like Holloway dominated Ortega, then there's the argument. But it just all depends on how this fight plays out at the weekend.
Yeah, I totally agree that it's not clear what to do with the rest of the division. You would hope that some new blood gets in there, but like Chat Sung Jung, no. Calvin Kattar, no. And then it's like Arnold Allen, Josh Emmett, and Giga Chikezi might be later this year, but not right now.
Yeah, we've got him on the brink, but I think he needs at least one big or maybe 2 big wins to be in that conversation.
Yeah, and Yair, I don't know, he's so inconsistent. Of like, he is technically top 3, but he fights so his schedule's odd, and like you know what I mean.
And he's he was banned. Well, I don't know if he's still banned, but he was banned for missing three tests, and he obviously had the dispute with the UFC as to. I believe that they released him and then they signed him up on short notice to fight Zombie in that fight. Obviously, I think, was that his last fight? Oh no, the Jeremy Stevens fight was his last fight when he poked him in the eye, and then he had the bad blood rematch, and it was just his UFC career from fighting Frankie Edgar at UFC 205 has spiraled quite badly, to be honest. And
he was a great prospect. He was an awesome prospect, but now it's like, man, when does this guy fight? And he's cool and stuff, but like, why does everything have to be weird with Yair Rodriguez? Why can't he just show up and fight?
Don't look forward to a Yair Rodriguez fight because you're always expecting him to pull out or something to happen where he doesn't fight. I'm sure. I bet you'll get scheduled to headline UFC London next year against Arnold Allen, and he'll have visa issues, which means that he won't be able to go over here or something like that. It's just it's a shame because he's losing out on prime years, but I think he's only 2 or 3, 1 or 2 good wins away from a title shot because he's new blood in the division.
It would be great. I don't know if he beats Max Holloway, but yeah, he fought twice in 2015, twice in 2016, twice in 2017, fought once in 2018, and then he fought in 2019, and that's still his last fight. So in the last almost 4 years, he's fought twice. So that's not amazing. However, moving down the card, we do have Valentina Shevchenko is going to put, I don't know what to say on this one, but she's fighting Lauren Murphy, who is technically at the top of the division, is the rightful top contender of that division. We've broken down Valentina Shevchenko in the past. She's great from distance. People think they can close the distance on her, and she's really good at getting a quick trip takedown and controlling from the medium and close range distance. And she just seems to be 1 or 2 steps ahead of everyone else in the division. I don't know what else to say. What do you think of this matchup?
Yeah, I think I like the fight because Lauren Murphy is more than deserving of a title shot. You know, I think she's on a 5-fight win streak at the moment. But it's just, you know, and it's nothing against, I don't want to bad, because like I say, Lauren Murphy is more than deserving. She lost to Sijara Eubanks, but yeah, she's on a 5-fight win streak, including 2 finishes, which, to be honest, at women's flyweight, unless you're the champion, it's good to get finishes. You know, it's Valentina gets finishes. That just happens. You know, that's like a rule of MMA. You know, she just does it. But for any other woman, to be honest, at flyweight, to get that many finishes, 2 in 5, is impressive. And these wins have come against good opposition. You know, Andrea Lee, Roxanne Modafferi, Joanne Calderwood last time out, and like I say, she's more than deserving of a title shot. But I cannot see how, you know, how we just spent the best part of 15 minutes breaking down the main event. I cannot see this breakdown is going to go more than two minutes. Shevchenko wins easily, dominates wherever the fight goes. I looked on the UFC stats website. Mm-hmm. Despite Murphy having a 70% takedown defense, Shevchenko doesn't take you down using traditional wrestling. Like you say, you try and close the distance, there's trips, there's more tie trips in there, and you know, Murphy will be probably the bigger girl in there, but Jessica I was the bigger girl in there. She dominated her for the best part of 4.5 minutes on the ground before finishing it with that savage head kick, which, you know, I watched I think 3 times this morning because I've got an article coming out I think later today. Nice. On the top 5 knockouts of all of those, and there's a little spoiler in there. It's in my top 5 to say the least.
Beautiful.
But yeah, that'll be coming out later today, hopefully, if the site's back up. So you know,
I'll put it down below once we're up and running.
Yeah, nice one. But the thing is with Murphy as well, she absorbs 4.25 strikes a minute, which is a lot for anyone, especially when you're facing Shevchenko. And with Shevchenko, she doesn't just jab you, you know, like we saw against Jessica I. She landed heavy body kicks in the first minute of the first round, then took her down and dominated her for 4 minutes on the ground. The second round, she reacted to an eye body kick and came back with her own rear left kick, and then threw another rear left kick, just you know, leading the dance this time. Then went upstairs, and I mean, that's all she wrote. The little hop, skip, and a jump over I's unconscious body is savage. And you know, I think
she looks so excited too. Just like exactly. It was like a little skip, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's like, oh, I don't even need to finish it with ground and pound, because I know that when my shin landed on her head, that was it. And at the end of the day, like I say, Lauren Murphy is more than deserving of a title shot. She's beat a number of top contenders like Roxanne Modafferi and Joanne Calderwood last time out, and it's nothing against Lauren Murphy, but I can't see anybody at 125 beating Shevchenko, whether it's Lauren Murphy, Caitlin Chikagian, Jessica Andrade, even Jojo Calderwood, Jessica Wright. None of these girls beat her, and it's beginning to almost get a bit stale. But because you know, I will always tune in for a Valentina fight because she's so technical, and it's great to watch. But at the same time, it's predictable, you know.
She does have a certain limited amount of tools that she uses, and those tools are so sharp. And like, let's just say she has like 5 moves that she does over and over again. Her opponents know those moves, and they can't beat her. Like that's how good she is at those moves that she does, right? But let me set the scene. Nick Diaz versus Robbie Lawler 2. The first time they fought, it has been so long. 2004. You know what was happening in 2004? Half-Life 2 just came out. World of Warcraft, the first one, just came out. Grand Theft Auto, San Andreas. What was going on in theaters? You're not going to believe it. Shrek 2. That's how long this has.
Oh,
Harry
God.
Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. Spider-Man 2, the Tobey Maguire one. That's how long. That's how long these boys have been fighting for. I think they fought when they were both teenagers or something like that, early in their UFC career. Now we get a rematch years later. Both of them have had storied careers, going from UFC titles to Strikeforce titles to challenging for UFC titles to ungraceful fall-offs and other challenges going on in the sport. Nick Diaz is on the other side of some of the weirdest stories in mixed martial arts, some of the greatest stories in mixed martial arts, including hospital fights. Pride 33, he was the man of Pride 33. The 1-2, if you remember, what was it, Diaz 1, 2, and 4, something like that, or 1, 2, and 5 that people used to say on the forums after the Condit fight. He was saying that he was poisoned by the Montreal Athletic Commission during his Georges St. Pierre fight. Ruthless Robbie Lawler earned a title shot, had some of the greatest wars in history against guys like Carlos Condit, Rory McDonald, Johnny Hendricks, Matt Brown. This guy has fought over and over again. He's on a skid right now, but now in 2021, they're having a rematch. I don't know what to say on this fight because you compare them in their prime, but we need to look at where they are right now. But what are your thoughts on this fight, Frazer?
Yeah, that's exactly. I don't know. I don't know what my thoughts. My thoughts on this fight is what fight. I'm excited. I only learned this week that it was a 5-rounder. It's the Diaz 5-round non-title fight, non-main event special. You know, Nate did it a few months back against Leon Edwards, and now his brother Nick is becoming only the second person to do it. And I am not mad about it at all. Because I can guarantee if we got a 3-round fight, if it goes all 3 rounds, people would be scrambling for the 4th and 5th. So schedule it for 5. If it goes 5, you know, we get 25 minutes of these two guys going at it. If it goes less than that, happy days. But, you know, at the same time, we know what Lawler's going to do. He's 1-5 in his last 6 after losing. But if you look at the names he's lost to, Woodley, who at the time, killer.
Yeah.
Ben Askren in that strange fight, but it is what it is, that fight.
Colby like you Covington. Said, I think you said, I think Lawler was out.
I mean, he was
out.
Or
sorry, Askren was out.
Yeah, after the slam and the about 4 or 5 punches, I think Lawler knocked him out with a slam maybe, and then woke him up with the punches. Which, you know, credit to Askren to be able to get his wits about him and then hold on to that bulldog choke. But it is what it is.
Yep.
You know, he's lost to RDA, he's lost to Colby Covington, Neil Magny last time out, who can put a pace on anyone. These aren't low-level guys. These are all top 8, top 10 guys, you know, especially, you know, Covington, RDA, Askren at the time, Woodley. You know, he has the win over Donald Cerrone, which he came out and he just went for it, which is what we like to see. You know, it's the shadow of Cerrone's former self, but but you know, MMA's changed from the last time that Nick Diaz fought. It hasn't changed since the last time that Robbie Lawler fought. Yes, it's always evolving, but how often did Nick Diaz have to avoid a low calf kick, for example? And yes, it's not a technique that Robbie Lawler tends to use an awful lot, but utilize it, because this is a guy that, let's be honest, in the past 6 years since we saw him against Anderson Silva, yes, he's still been training, he's still been teaching jiu-jitsu, he's still been probably hitting pads, but he's not been fight training. He hasn't been sparring for a fight. Has he been defending? You know, the Diaz brothers, especially Nate, you know, he's susceptible to that low leg kick because he's so heavy on the lead leg. Attack the leg. Lawler has to attack that leg and, you know, really utilize the fact that he's been the more active fighter in the past, 6 years at least, you know, and the game has adapted. You know, there's so many different training techniques now, especially with Lawler being, you know, at that top level training, you know, fighting for the welterweight title, defending, having those wars with Condit and McDonald. The game has changed. You know, the jab is more of a factor now. So how's Nick Diaz going to, you know, he's always had good hands, he's always had a good jab, but how's he going to utilize that now? The low leg kick, the, you know, different trip takedowns that we see more often now. The octagon control, I think, has changed a lot. Previously, we saw, especially in Diaz Lawler 1, just 2 men just walking in and meeting in the middle, then 1 man backing up and then the other man backing up. And, you know, how are we going to see, you know, is Lawler going to take the center and look to, you know, almost impose its will and try and catch Diaz cold, having gone in there and like, we speak about it all the time. Is he going to be able to cut off the octagon as well as, because Diaz isn't used to having to cut off the octagon. He's got out of that trend, and yes, he's obviously been sparring and watching, and he's around MMA as well. He's a mixed martial artist at heart, but it's different being a mixed martial artist in the gym and being a mixed martial artist in competition. So it'll be exciting to see, and I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm excited for it.
I think saying I don't know is the best way to really state this fight, because Nick was a guy who always took long layoffs in between his fights, but we're talking up to 2 years, and a lot of that was, or maybe a year or something like that, and some of that was because he was suspended during that time. But for me, I'm going to pick Diaz, but the reason is because Lawler's decline is so obvious. It's so physically obvious that you can see his physical decline in every fight that he's been in, whereas we haven't seen Diaz since 2015, and before that 2013 was his last couple of fights, and before that 2012. Like he fights so sparingly, and now it's been 6 years. He might have a severe physical decline that's quite embarrassing, but I just haven't seen it. So based on evidence that I've seen in the octagon, I have to pick Diaz, because during his last fight compared to Lawler's last fight, well, that's all I really know about these guys. Exactly. And if you're going to spam 200 punches against Lawler, that probably does work really well. He's a guy who just kind of covers up and doesn't always counter like we saw against Covington. But yeah, I don't know what to expect in this fight, because Nick is old. Nick is old. We just haven't seen the decline. We have to assume there is a decline. He is training apparently with Tyson Fury for this fight. I don't know how that's going to help him. I think it's just for the photo op or something like that.
Yeah, I didn't know. I haven't seen any of that, which is, is there many comparisons between Tyson Fury and Robbie Lawler? Not that I know of. None of them have hair. Is about the only comparison that I can see. So maybe he's trying to visually prepare for Robbie Lawler, but yeah, I don't really. And
I don't know why that would help.
From Fury's perspective, how does Nick Diaz help him train for Deontay Wilder?
Man, no clue. I think it's just for the photo op, right? But
exactly,
it's a fun fight, and I don't know. What do you do with the winner? What do you do with the loser? They're two old men. They're not going to compete in the top 10 of the division, realistically. What do you do in this matchup after?
Well, you say that. I think Diaz wins, even if it's a split decision. I think he maybe fights Masvidal for the BMF. He's got that caveat, and then the winner of that maybe he fights Usman. Let's be honest, it's not the UFC isn't a fair company. Leon Edwards should be getting the next title shot above Colby Covington, above Jorge Masvidal, above Gilbert Burns on merit.
Not happening.
Is it going to happen? Absolutely not. Especially after he came out and said, I'm not going to wait around. I'm going to wait around. I'm not going to fight Masvidal and all this. Fight Masvidal. You've got the story there, the 3-piece and a soda story from London a few years ago.
Absolutely.
A win over Masvidal cements your position as the number one. And no one can deny you that. Now, that's fair. The UFC isn't fair. If Nick Diaz gets a win against Robbie Lawler, he fights Jorge Masvidal. I think if who else are you going to put him up? You're not going to put him up against a Vicente Luque. You're not going to put him up against a Leon Edwards, a Colby Covington. Jorge Masvidal is a winnable fight for Nick Diaz, depending on how he looks, And like I say, you've got the storyline going in of, you beat Nate Diaz. Now you'll fight the big brother for the BMF title. And I think that's the story coming out. And that's the fight that Masvidal takes. He's never been further away from a title shot. And, why not? I don't think he beats Usman any day of the week. So why not defend this BMF title and make as much money as you can? Because he's not getting any younger. Masvidal, he's 37 and 36 himself, so might as well make all the money you can.
No, exactly right. The UFC at this point is making more about making if you're a money fighter, they're going to make exceptions for you, and they're going to do whatever they want. But yeah, Masvidal was kind of the fight that I picked as well. He's said that that's a good fight if Nick looked good. I mean, Masvidal probably does beat him. Masvidal's in better shape and arguably at the best point of his career. But yeah, it's we might be really sad come Sunday after this fight. This might just be two old guys who don't have it anymore. Or if Nick looks good, that's kind of a fun storyline. But yeah, it has been a minute. Exactly. What else is on this card? It's a really good card as well. We also have the Anthony Joshua versus Oleksandr Usyk coming in this weekend. I don't know if you have any thoughts on it. I haven't broken down this fight at all. I'm not going to be a charlatan to pretend that I know a lot about boxing or anything like that. Any thoughts on this fight?
Yeah, no, I'm really excited for this one. On the undercard, we've got Callum Smith making his light heavyweight debut against someone he's just going to knock over. You know, he's obviously coming off the loss to Canelo where he didn't look good, but you know, he was killing himself to get down to super. I think it was super middleweight. No, he's a light heavyweight. I think that's going to be a really good move for him. But I've got an article coming out. I'm sort of halfway through it. It's a lot of quite a lot of statistics. It's actually kind of that's what I'm into. You know, I'm a stats man. So it's analyzing Anthony Joshua pre Vladimir Klitschko and post Vladimir Klitschko, because pre Klitschko he was going in, he was knocking everyone out. He only went past the third round twice, and both of those fights he finished in the seventh round. Now post Klitschko, where he did get hurt, he had to go deeper into the round. He obviously finished it in the 11th. He hasn't gone anything less than the seventh round. He's gone up to the seventh round. He's become very jab heavy. I've looked at the number of jabs that he's thrown in his first, I think, all the fights up to Klitschko and all the fights after. He's become very jab heavy, especially, you know, we've now got 2 decision victories in there, which obviously he's got over Joseph Parker and the Ruiz rematch. And, you know, Oleksandr Usyk is the better boxer. There's no denying that. But Anthony Joshua is the much bigger guy. And the question's coming in, does he come into the fight lighter so he can be on his feet and try and outbox Usyk on the outside? Or does he come in big, heavy, look, I'm going to impose my will on you. I'm the bigger guy. I'm going to let you feel this power, because Usyk hasn't looked at all that great in his heavyweight. You know, he fought Derek Chisora and Witherspoon. You know, they are what they are, those wins, but he's fighting Anthony Joshua now. It's Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury at the top of the division. There's no denying that. So if you can knock off Joshua, you know, not only does that ruin Joshua's plans for a big unification bout with Fury next year in hopefully in England, but it throws a massive spanner into the works of the entirety of heavyweight boxing. But unfortunately, boxing is more corrupt than MMA. If it goes to the points and it's even remotely close, Joshua's getting his hand raised. So, but yeah, that will be out on the website. I think either probably tomorrow afternoon or Thursday morning. So yeah, look out for that. I put a lot of work into it. It's quite an interesting piece to write as well. So.
Perfect. So we got a statistical breakdown on Anthony Joshua. Man, I love that you and I are such dorks about this like statistical analysis stuff. I absolutely love it. But yeah, I do like the business of boxing because it is kind of fun. But yeah, I feel like that Fury Joshua fight, I want to say it has to be done in England, but I know that we're going to be disappointed by saying that, right? There's no possible way.
Sure.
Dollars and cents are going to be, it's going to be in Las Vegas, but it needs to be in England. It's like a cultural moment because both of these guys, when they fight, it's so rare in this day and age where you get events that everybody's watching, right? Like Game of Thrones was the last one where everybody was watching it, and we haven't had anything like that ever since. And we used to have it a lot more. Like you could talk about Lost or any shows like this and you knew someone was watching it, but we don't get that anymore. And I feel like Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury is an example of that, where everyone's actually going to stop and watch this fight. And like, these are the 2 greatest English fighters in half a century or something like that, right? Like this has to happen in England, and we know it won't, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think it'll probably go to the money. Will take it to Saudi Arabia, like they did for the Joshua Ruiz rematch. And it's a shame, you know. The only caveat to that is that it'll be put on at a reasonable time for the British audience.
That's true.
With that being said, it's not the point, you know. It needs to be in either Tottenham Stadium where Joshua fights Usyk this weekend, or Wembley, you know, fill it out. Like you say, other than Lennox Lewis, we haven't had a British heavyweight champion with this much skill and this much hype in forever, you know. And you don't want it to become a Floyd Mayweather, Manny Pacquiao when yes, they do fight, but they fight too late, you know. You want this to be next for each man, and it won't be, because, you know, Tyson Fury, whether he was just sort of winding people up, came out saying, look, I'm going to fight Deontay Wilder, then I'll fight Dillian White in December, then I'll fight Joshua in the rematch, then Derek Chisora, then I'm done. Now, that's assuming that you get through Deontay. Yeah, exactly. That's assuming that you get through Deontay Wilder for a third time, which everything suggests that he will do. But the end, that first fight, the end of the first fight also suggests that he might not. And that's assuming that Joshua gets through Usyk, who is not an easy fight. And, on the outside, we got Dillian White now scheduled against Otto Wallin, who Dillian White should knock him over, but it's not, he went 12 rounds with Fury, and we've got Joe Joyce on the outside looking in with, I think it's WBO number one contender. So we've got, him looking in. He's just got the big win over Daniel Dubois and then Carlos Takam. And he called for the fight with Usyk, but Usyk, took on his mandatory position to fight Joshua. And, it's exciting. The heavyweight division is exciting at the moment because you've got a lot of guys who are up there being able to compete with each other. But with that being said, you've got a lot of guys that will probably face each other before Joshua fights Fury, which is frustrating because that's the fight that needs to happen next, without a doubt.
Absolutely. And I really do like what you said with listing all these guys and saying heavyweight boxing is fun. This is the first time in almost 30 years that heavyweight boxing has been fun. It's been interesting. It hasn't just been two, Klitschko's passing around some belts. I would personally love Wembley Stadium because that's where Muhammad Ali and Sir Henry Cooper fought. And I think it was the first time that Muhammad Ali went to heavyweight. I might be wrong about that. Sir Henry Cooper was a champion from England. It did drop him with a left hook that Joe Frazer later used on Muhammad Ali. So there's a lot of history there. Tottenham would be, I always say with the wrong accent, I'm sorry, but Tottenham would be great. But I just love the history that you would have at Wembley. So hopefully that happens. But yeah, like you said, we're probably going to be let down. Anything else you want to say on the heavyweight boxing tip?
I think that's it. I think we'll probably, obviously, I'll be watching it on Saturday night, so we'll probably break it down. There's going to be too much from this. It's essentially an MMA podcast, so we'll break it down. We'll, maybe just comment on the result, how the fight went, and what's next for each man. I think next Monday, and but yeah, we'll be focusing on UFC 266 because there's simply two. There's going to be, it's the kind of, there's so many, headlining the prelims, Moraes versus Moraes. You've got Dan Hooker and Nasrat Haqparast. So Medic versus Jalen Turner. You got Marion Fano on there. So
let's break them down. Let's start with Curtis Blaydes, Jairzinho Rozenstruik. We got about 10 minutes left. Jairzinho versus Blaydes. What do you think?
It's a difficult one because it's Jairzinho's got the power, Blaydes has got the wrestling. It's striker versus wrestler. If Blaydes gets it down, I think it'll be a long night for Biggie Boy. But if Jairzinho can avoid the takedown, I think it's going to be a long night for Blaydes. And I know it's not going to go 3-4 rounds because one of the guys is going out, I think. And I'm leaning towards Blaydes. Just I don't think he's going to be as reckless after he got knocked out by
last couple of guys. Derek Lewis, yeah.
I think he's going to look to set up his takedowns, hide them a little bit more. But Rozenstruik is going to be aware that the uppercut's going to be there when Blaydes shoots in. If I hurt you on the feet and you desperately shoot for a takedown, the blueprint's there. The uppercut's going to land. So it's going to be an interesting one. I think. What does it do for the division itself? I'm not so sure. The division is next fight is Cyril Gane versus Francis. The next fight is that. After that, maybe Stipe or John Jones, and then whoever doesn't get the next fight probably does get the next fight. If it's not Stipe or John Jones next, let's say it's Stipe next, it's John Jones after that.
Yeah.
And then we've got the up and coming. It's been almost an hour and I haven't mentioned Tom Aspinall.
Yeah, we did it. We mentioned Tom.
We managed to get him in, despite the fact there's only 2 heavyweight fights on this card. We managed to get him in. So, but no, in all seriousness, he's an up and comer. He's looked great, and I think with the 2 losses to, we've still got Derek Lewis, who, yes, he was dominated by Cyril Gane, but he's got the win over Francis Ngannou, and there's a lot of guys I think that are better than Curtis Blaydes, and a lot of guys that I think are better than Jairzinho Rozenstruik, especially in the top 10 and top 5, and some maybe even in the top 10. So it's going to be difficult. I'm not sure where the winner of this fight goes. The loser of this fight, as sad it probably becomes quite irrelevant and becomes the gatekeeper.
I know. I agree with you. Heavyweight MMA is sometimes like that, where you just kind of drift off because of skills. But it's a classic striker versus classic wrestler. I'm always going to take Curtis Blaydes in a matchup like that. Any thoughts on Jessica Andrade versus Cynthia Cavillo?
Yeah, it's a difficult one because I've seen on the BT Sport breakdown, on the Fight Disciples breakdown, that they're hinting that Cynthia Calvillo with a win here could get a title shot. That says
What?
everything you need to know about how shallow the flyweight division is. You know, she's
I mean, a
I
loss
don't
to Caitlin Chukagian and then a win
exactly.
over like Jessica
I think it was
Andrade.
Jessica
Sure.
Rai last time. Yeah, you know, she's ranked number 5, but she hasn't fought anyone. You know, she's fought Caitlin Chukagian and lost. Like it's as simple as that. You know, if she
Yeah.
looks good against Jessica Andrade, that's fine. But Andrade was dominated by the champ last time out, and you know, if Andrade wins, what do you do next? You do maybe the. I've got no interest in seeing the rematch between her and the champ because it was so easy for Valentina.
Yeah.
A rematch between her and Chukagian, maybe, but then she dominated Chukagian with the body shot finish, and I think Joanne Calderwood has a fight lined up. Let's double check, but maybe if Calderwood can come through her next fight and yeah, so Calderwood's gonna fight Alexa Grasso in November. The winner of that maybe fights Andrade to see, you know, if they really are deserving of a title shot and can maybe hang with the champ. But you know, Valentina's her own worst enemy. You know, she beats all of these girls easily, and it's she's never going to be a headliner because you know how the fight's going to go. You know,
Yeah. I don't know either.
it's a
Yeah.
difficult one. She's always going to be co-headliner or headlining a fight night. You know, her last however many 4 or so wins have just been dominant. She lost one round against Jennifer, not even lost a round against Jennifer Meyer, I don't think. But everyone was saying how, you know, her last competitive fight was Joanna Jędrzejczyk, and that wasn't competitive. You know, and
No.
if you consider that was on the undercard of Holloway Ortega, I think that tells you everything that you need to know about, you know, brutally knocked out Jessica Rai, dominated Liz Carmouche, finished Caitlin Chukagian from crucifix, dominated Jennifer Meyer. Again, crucifix finish of Jessica Andrade.
Mm.
She's going to get the victory again here this weekend against Lauren Murphy. It's just very same old, I think. But you know, that's not Shevchenko's fault. And look, we're supposed to be breaking down the Andrade versus Calvillo fight, and we have to talk about the champ because of, you know, she is that division. You know, but I think in this fight, you know, Andrade I think can keep it on the feet. You know, she's probably the stronger girl out of the two. Now that Calvillo doesn't have to cut weight, she'll probably look. You know, she'll be able to go the 15-minute distance. She's got the better ground game, but at the same time, Andrade has got the much heavier hands we saw against like Kovacevic and whatnot. So I think an Andrade decision maybe a late stoppage, but I can't see it. I can't see Calvillo getting herself into a position. You know, she'll be able to get into the clinch, I think, against a shorter Andrade if she is in trouble and recover if she needs to. But I think Andrade gets it done, but it doesn't do anything for the division even though she's the number 1 against the number 5. None of them get a title shot off the back of it, in my opinion.
The dang curse of Shevchenko being way too good for everybody else. So yeah, it's I'm not entirely sure either. I want to pick I do want to pick Cavillo in this fight because she's longer and stuff like that. But yeah, she might just end up having a tactical error and get finished by Jessica Andrade, who does hit extremely hard and is extremely strong. We got 2 really interesting fights to break down in the next few minutes. Marlon Moraes versus Merab Dvalishvili. Great fight at bantamweight. Absolutely love this fight. Marlon Moraes coming off two TKO losses. He's taken 9 months off, so hopefully he has recovered. That was the biggest factor for me in this fight, is that if he was taking a fight just like 6 months after getting knocked out, I probably would pick Merab easily by TKO, but it has been 9 months. So I'm hoping his brain has recovered enough that he doesn't get finished. I'm going to pick Marlon because I have to assume that they're both in their prime. However, I could just see Marlon getting knocked out because, I mean, you got 2 TKO losses just in the last little while here. But what do you see in this matchup? It's a great one.
Yeah, see, I think this is what's good. You know, I disagree. I think I'm going to pick Merab because we saw against Henry Cejudo that Marlon Moraes, he gassed out and he struggled. He gassed out ever so slightly against Jose Aldo. And if you're constantly defending, yes, it drains your gas tank. shooting for takedowns and not getting them, but defending takedowns and having to be switched on for the full 15 minutes when you're defending takedowns. It's draining, it is tiring. And Moraes sets a pace, I think, like no one else in the bantamweight division. And we saw him last time out against Cody. I think it was Cody Stamen in his last fight. And although he wasn't able to land as many takedowns as we've seen in the past, he still landed 5 takedowns. And we saw him against John Dodson. He wasn't able to land so many takedowns, but he landed a lot of strikes in that fight. And then he landed 13 takedowns the fight before, 12 the fight before, 5 the fight before, 5 the fight before that. He landed 6 in a loss to Ricky Simone, and then he also lost to Frankie Simons when he landed 11 takedowns.
That's pretty good.
He controlled the fight for 7 minutes. He landed 104 total strikes to Frankie Simons at 66, but he lost the fight. Worked that one out. I mean, that was a poor decision. At the end of the day, I think he can set a pace on Marlon Moraes as long as he doesn't get caught like Aljamain Sterling did. Shooting in when Marlon Moraes gets that knee up before he throws the head kick. I can see even a late TKO finish for Moraes or a fairly straightforward decision. I think Marlon Moraes has hit his ceiling, and unfortunately, because when he burst onto the scene, he looked good, but I think he's hit his ceiling in the UFC.
No, it's a great fight. I'm really that could be a headliner on any other week,
exactly.
right?
Yeah, that's a fight night headliner. It's what we said a few weeks ago. Is why are they not splitting these? Dan Hooker's a main event fighter, if not a main card co-main event fighter. His last fight. I'm assuming that's the next fight you want to break down, Hooker versus Haqparast.
Yeah, jump right in.
His last fight was on the McGregor-Poirier undercard, co-main event against Michael Chandler, and then the fight before that was against Dustin Poirier. He's money.
Yep.
The biggest thing for this is going to be the fight week. I don't know if you've heard the story of him only, there's one flight out of New Zealand. He's had to go to social media to try and get his visa and whatnot.
It's been a stressful week for the man.
Exactly. And I think he gets into Vegas on Thursday or Friday. So he's going to be cutting weight. He gets in on Thursday. So he'll be cutting weight on the plane, potentially. And then he's got to go through all the checks. I don't imagine he'll obviously be attending. Luckily, he is on the undercard, so he won't be attending the press conference. With that being said, Haqparast, obviously, condolences to him. His mother passed away last week. So both of these men, and I saw Ariel Helwani tweet it out, which I completely agree with, make this fight an open weight, or a 165-pound fight or a 160-pound. Don't make the guys, Haqparast doesn't want to cut weight when he's so emotionally drained anyway. You're emotionally drained after a fight camp anyway. And then on top of that, with everything going on with his mother, just give him those extra 5 or 10 pounds. And same with Dan Hooker. He doesn't want to have to cut weight on the plane after the stress of the week that he's had. So just make the fight slightly heavier. But I think Dan Hooker's got nothing to gain other than getting back in the win column over a well-regarded name. Whereas Haqparast is obviously unranked, fighting a top 10 guy. He's, straight in the top 15, top 10 with a win over Hooker. So should be a good one. I'm really excited for that one as well.
Imagine flying out of New Zealand and you're one of the few flights out of New Zealand and it's 14 hours to get to the United States or something like that. And the guy next to you has garbage bags wrapped around him and is sweating for all 14 hours.
I don't know if, that wouldn't be, it's not, I couldn't imagine. I don't know. I think I'd maybe request surely the plane is not full, so maybe I'd request a seat swap.
Somewhere else.
But this is the thing that I can't understand, obviously, it's slightly different because they're different countries, but I watched The Embedded this morning and Volkanovski was in on Saturday, Saturday just gone. He was into Las Vegas to acclimatize, jet lag and whatnot, acclimatize to the heat, any COVID protocols that he's got to go through. I don't know what the isolation is like in the US, but and then he can start doing his media. Yes, it's different because he's the main event, but he can start doing his media, do the press conference, get a bit more of a feel for how, because everyone says how dry the desert is in Las Vegas, and to be flying straight from New Zealand off the plane, cutting weight. Dan Hooker won't pretty much won't leave the fighter hotel until he has to actually fight on Saturday night. You know, he'll fly straight in, go straight to the hotel, cut weight, go down to the lobby, weigh in, go straight back upstairs. Not only recover from the weight cut, but recover from the flight itself. You know, and then what? 36 hours after, be in a cage fighting another man in front of a crowd, which is, I think, will be big for Dan Hooker to be in front of a crowd again, but it's not the greatest prep in the world, to be honest.
No, so in their prime, I'd still probably pick Hooker. I think Nasperat's volumetric style kind of plays well into Hooker's game. But yeah, coming into this fight, I don't know what to expect from the health of either man, who's going to be more focused or unfocused, how the weight cut is. There's a lot of jet lag. There's so many weird factors going into this fight. And unfortunately, it's a great fight. And I do want to see both these guys in their prime. I want to see both these guys compete at their best, but it's just not the case.
That's the thing. You want to see both men at 100%, and whether we're going to get that or not, it's debatable, but it's still a great fight on paper, so hopefully it plays out to how we want to see it.
I hope so. I hope it wins fight of the night. It has fight of the night written all over it. It's a great one.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is the UFC 268 breakdown. Volkanovski versus Ortega. We broke down the entire card. Touch on some of the boxing this weekend. What else do we got going on, Frazer? What else? I mean, I'll put some links down below for the website. My name's Tim Wheaton. You can check me out, Tim Wheaton MMA. Frazer, last word. Where can we find more of you?
Yeah, so Frazer Crone writing on Instagram, quite active on there. We're now on Spotify and all over the podcast network. So check us out on there, MMA Sucka Podcast. This week we've got Dana White Contender Series results and staff picks for that. We've got, you know, loads of stuff going on the website. So just keep it like, you know, it's a big fight week, and we're, as you could probably predict, we're going to be all over it because yeah, it's a big one. So we're looking forward to that. And then me and Tim will be back next Monday to break down the UFC 266 card and have a look forward to Thiago Santos versus Johnny Walker, which I'm already out of breath thinking about it now, and it's 2 weeks away. So
man, it should be either really good or a very embarrassing fight. There's no in between for these two guys. Either like one guy blows out his shoulder or the other guy blows out his knee, or we have a good fight. And I don't know what is more likely.
I hope it's the latter. So, but yeah, I'm sure we'll break it down next Monday and have a look at some of the other fights on that card as well.
Beautiful stuff. Thanks so much for your time, folks.
Thank you very much.